Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick, back once again to look at some more spoilers for X-Wing 2nd Edition, because this is it! We now have everything. The final two conversion packs, being the Imperial and Scum, were spoiled over the past couple of days over on the Bell of Lost Souls YouTube channel. So if you want to see all the details on that, feel free to click the link in the description. I've linked each of those 3 unboxings they've done so far. But if you want to hang around for a bit more of an in-depth discussion, keep watching this video. Just a quick disclaimer before I jump into these. Yes, obviously, I'm not presenting any new information in terms of these cards. The primary source of information for all of these was the Bell of Lost Souls YouTube channel. And one other thing, I will not be covering the pilots from the TIE Striker. I already did another video covering all of those, so click the annotation up here if you want to see them. But yes, here we go. Here is every single Imperial pilot for Wave 1 of X-Wing 2nd Edition. Starting off alphabetically with the Alpha Class Starwing. Here we go. And previously unspoiled was the Row Squadron pilot and Major Vinder. The Row Squadron pilot just being a reprint of the Row Squadron veteran, and Major Vinder just being a functional reprint of his former self. PS7 going to Initiative 4, which is pretty much what we've come to expect from Initiative 7. But apart from that, not much to say about this platform, just slight tweaks in the configuration. I have previously talked about this. We actually covered all of the ships when FFG did their unboxing, so click this annotation up here if you want a bit more discussion on the ships itself. But in terms of the pilots we have here, yeah, pretty straightforward functional reprints. Let's wait and see what they cost. Okay, moving on to the Lambda class shuttle, and this quite possibly has had the most significant upgrade. Now, it's no surprise the ship wasn't really performing all that well in first edition. I mean, it saw very consistent meta play, but that's only because it was the cheapest PALP platform and continues to be. But in terms of how the ship functions, I felt like it really did need a bit of an upgrade, and it's got one. Apart from that 2 red dice in the back, all of these pilot abilities have changed, and the title has changed as well. Lieutenant Sai has replaced Captain Yor, and after you perform a coordinate action, if the ship you chose performed an action on your action bar, you may perform that action. So that's interesting. You can always reinforce if you have a friendly ship with reinforce, but I think the most common application of this will be focus. What I'm really curious about is jam. If Lieutenant Sai causes himself to execute a jam action with his ability, I don't know if that's meant to be read or not. I mean, it says you perform an action that's on your action bar, but you're not specifically performing the action on your action bar. I'm going to guess it's probably white, but I think there's room for interpretation either way there. But all in all, I really like this ability. I just think it's a bit of a shame that it's had to have cost Captain Yor's ability. Captain Yor being the most commonly flown Lambda class shuttle currently in first edition. So we'll see how the meta goes without his ability. We also have Colonel Jendon. At the start of the activation phase, you may spend 1 charge. He only has 2 and they do not replenish. If you do, while friendly ships acquire target locks this round, they must acquire locks beyond range 3 instead of at range 0 to 3. And I think this is really cool. Also, this is something very, very important, guys. This says instead of range 0 to 3. So now we have confirmation that you can lock ships that you have bumped. And this was important because of our discussions with the E-Wing. There was that weird clause about locking ships at range 1. And now we know how that interaction works. You can lock ships that you have bumped. And I think this is really cool. In both editions, Colonel Jendon plays around with target locks. And this seems like a no-brainer ability. The ability to use that charge on round 1 when none of the ships are at range of each other means you can get target locks early, which is going to be really, really good for the ace builds. In fact, good for most builds. Even Ordnance builds going to love this. It just depends on the costings and how we can fit him into that list. Captain Kargi. At the start of the engagement phase, you may choose 1 or more friendly ships at range 0 to 3. If you do, transfer all enemy lock tokens from the chosen ships to you. And this is still playing around with the old ability to prevent your opponent from locking your friendly ships. Yeah, I can see some use in this if your opponent's using ordnance carriers, you don't want your aces getting shot. However, you don't really want your shuttle getting shot either, but at least you do have the ability to reach from the back line behind your ships to your ships that might be in range of your opponent, preventing your opponent from shooting the shuttle which might be out of range. Something to think about. I don't know. I don't think Captain Kargi's ability is as relevant as the other 2, but it's something interesting to play around with anyway. The ST-321 title has also changed. After you perform a coordinate action, you may choose an enemy ship at range 0 to 3 of the ship you coordinated. If you do, acquire a target lock on that enemy ship, ignoring range restrictions. Now, unfortunately, we don't have the old Colonel Jendon ability to combo with this, so there's no obvious synergy between this and some of the pilots. but it's good value. If it cost relatively less than the old title, I could see it getting play. And if it is costed effectively enough, it means you are actively encouraged to fight with your Lambda shuttle, so you're not just flying it around the back with Palp or whatever equivalent to Palp we get in 2nd edition. And I think that's a good thing. Also, it's worth noting that the ship does have a rear arc now, so target locks are a bit more relevant overall. You're going to have more opportunities to shoot with them. Okay, now we're going to work our way through the long list of TIEs, starting off with the TIE Advanced Prototype. We have here Baron of the Empire and the Inquisitor taking up the generic slots. And it's important to note, Baron of the Empire comes with a talent and Inquisitor comes with a Force upgrade. And according to the devs, this is really going to highlight the importance of Force upgrades. And Inquisitor is going to be more expensive than Baron of the Empire because of that. Apparently significantly so, which is pretty cool. Also, Inquisitor is currently the only generic Force using pilot, which is interesting. I'll be curious to see how much he costs, what kind of Force cards we can put on it. If we can get supernatural reflexes on Inquisitor and maybe fly it as a 3-of, that could be really cool. But look, it all comes down to the costing, so we'll see what happens there. In terms of new cards we just had revealed, we have here Seventh Sister. While you perform a primary attack before the neutralize result step, you may spend 2 Force, of which he has 2 that replenishes, to cancel 1 evade result. And I like this a lot. It gives a lot of flexibility for your Force tokens. If you're going all out offensive and you don't roll eyeball results, then you still have a way to spend those Force tokens in a way that's advancing your game strategy, which is really good. Now, of course, by doing that, you can't use them on defense, and that has a bit of inherent risk in it, but I think that's okay. Plus, she's a Force user. She's going to be able to take supernatural reflexes or one of the other cool Force abilities. Obviously, as the waves come out, we'll get more and more, and I think every time we get new Force abilities, particularly on the dark side, the TIE Advanced Prototype is going to be one of those ones that we keep looking back at. Grand Inquisitor, yes, we have covered this before. While you defend an attack at range 1, you may spend 1 Force to prevent range 1 bonus. While you perform an attack against a defender at range 2 to 3, you may spend 1 Force to apply a range 1 bonus. You get the flexibility of negating your opponent's range 1 bonus as well as giving it to yourself, as well as having Force tokens. Yeah, I think the Inquisitor's going to be a lot more expensive than his original version, but I think that's okay. But the most significant thing that we've learnt from this pack is there is no TIE V1 title / configuration / whatever. And I think that's actually a good thing. We're sort of leaning away from token stacking in 2nd edition. Sure, it's nice to be able to get target locks and evades and fly offensively and defensively, but we got to remember that this ship currently is a powerhouse in the 1st edition meta, and token stacking just isn't so much of a thing moving forward. I honestly don't think this hurts the ship too much. These abilities look awesome. The fact that they can all take Force upgrades is going to be absolute gravy, and I don't think these ships are going to suffer much for losing the title. And moving on to the regular old TIE Advanced, which has been trimmed down significantly. I mean, it had a lot of pilots in 1st edition. One of the things I've noticed as we're looking through these, there are several ships, particularly ones that got fixes like the TIE Advanced or the TIE Defender or the TIE Interceptor, that had a lot of generics, and there simply isn't any need to do this anymore, because one of the key ways that FFG used to fix ships was they had an aggressively costed generic with an EPT. Now they can change the costings of any of the generics on the fly, and they can take away or give them talents as well. So that kind of quote-unquote fix can come on the fly through the app without us having to buy more fix packs, which is really good. We have generics at Initiative 2 and 3. Zertic Storm at Initiative 3. During the end phase, you may spend a lock you have on an enemy ship to expose one of that ship's damage cards. This is borrowing the old Lieutenant Colzet ability. And what's interesting is it does not specify random like the old Lieutenant Colzet ability. And that leads me to think that the default will be random. We have seen a few different ships that are able to do this, and I just get the impression, because this is meant to imprint that old ability onto this ship, I don't think it's designed to get that upgrade of you being able to choose. So, you know, pilots like Thane Kyrell and stuff like that, it looks like this may be setting the precedent that you do not get to choose which damage card gets flipped face up. I might be wrong, that's just my guess from what we can see here. Ved Foslo has taken Juno Eclipse old ability, only Initiative 4 though, moving down from PS8, which is a bit of a shame. Marek Steel is a functional reprint, Initiative 5 over PS7, so that's a little bit of an upgrade, which is always good. And yes, Darth Vader. I'm not going to go through Darth Vader now, we've talked about him ad nauseum at this point. Really cool pilot, 3 replenishing force tokens, the only pilot in the game currently that does that. It's going to be nuts, chaining together a lot of actions, yeah, Vader's good. And here on the screen we have the TIE Aggressor, which there's not really much to say, to be honest. Lieutenant Kestel comes in at Initiative 4, which is a functional reprint of the old one. Double Edge comes in at Initiative 2 and does exactly the same as the old Double Edge, except that the card does specify turrets or missiles, so I guess down the track, if there's any secondary weapons in modifications or talents, like Snapshot or something like that. Not that you could fire after Snapshot with Double Edge anyway, but just in case those cards do exist, FFG have covered their bases and made sure there's not going to be any crazy combos coming out. And I think this is a bit of a shame. I never really liked Double Edge in first edition, and I think the ability could have used a bit of a push. But look, when the TIE Aggressor comes out in second edition, maybe we'll get some more relevant pilots. Hopefully these are aggressively costed enough. We saw a little bit of play with the 4 of Sinar Specialist with TLTs. Obviously we don't have TLTs moving forward, so it'll be interesting to see how that's all balanced out. But yeah, we'll see what happens when the app drops. If this is more aggressively costed, no pun intended, I think this could see a bit more play, hopefully. The TIE Bomber has had a very light trimming with its pilots. Again, we've gotten rid of one of the generics because we no longer need to apply that kind of fix. The Gamma Squadron Pilot and Gamma Squadron Veteran have been mushed together to make the Gamma Squadron Ace. We had Deathfire previously revealed. He's playing like the TIE Bomber Fell's Wrath kind of role, which I think is really cool. Captain Jonas is almost a functional reprint of his former self, but he now specifies missiles or torpedoes, so we can't use turrets or cannons. I think that's probably fair enough. Major Rama is a functional reprint of his former self, moved down to Initiative 4, except he does specify torpedoes and missiles. Again, if there's anything that can give special attacks through modifications, talents, this is just covering that base. And Tomax Bren is very interesting. I really like this. After you perform a reload action, you may recover 1 charge token on one of your equipped upgrade cards. Now, the old Tomax Bren allowed you to replenish your EPTs for free every single time you used them. So the new one requires you to reload, but the ability still seems really powerful. And it's just one of those things we have to keep looking out for. A lot of EPTs, or talents as they're now referred to, have charges, like Lone Wolf, for example. So these are things we do have to watch out for. And I think mechanically it makes sense to tie it in with the Bomber's new red reload, which is really cool. Plus, yes, there's also the Nimble Bomber clause, which allows you to drop bombs with the curve templates. Alongside the reload, I think is going to be very helpful. So Tomax Bren doing stuff he'd already be doing anyway, and that seems to make a lot of sense with his pilot ability. The TIE Defender has also lost one of its generic pilots in the Glaive Squadron pilots. Again, nothing that's required in second edition because of the way the app works. They've also lost Marek Steel, which seems fair enough. If Marek Steel is balanced well in TIE Advanced, I don't think he really needs to be on 2 different platforms. His ability will be relevant if the TIE Advanced is well balanced, so that's fine there. Now, I've already mentioned Countess Riot and Rex Labrath, but just yesterday we had revealed Colonel Vessery. While you perform an attack against a locked ship, after you roll attack die, you may acquire a lock on the defender. So it is a functional reprint of the old one. At Initiative 4 seems fair for the PS6 of old. Seems good. I think Riot, Rex Labrath and Colonel Vessery are still as relevant as they always were. I think they'll be good competitive ships moving forward. Okay, so first up guys, I have to apologise for all the clutter on the screen and the quality of some of these images. I had to stretch and skew these as best I could to try and restore them, but yes, obviously we're going off unboxing videos and I can only work with what I have. But this is the spread of TIE Fighter pilots. It already had a lot of pilots and it only has 1 less moving in second edition, which seems fine to me. And what I really like about the design of this ship is the fact that it has so many pilots that sit at the same initiative. And before we talk about this, I do want to mention just one more time, yes, the devs have talked about this. The TIE Fighter is now our baseline ship where It's like the yardstick that we measure everything else in the game from. The Academy Pilot, 24 points. It's the same old 12 points from first edition that it always was, and everything is kind of scaled up from that point. Remember guys, the X-Wing is not the base level ship in X-Wing, especially not with servo motor S-foils. It's the TIE Fighter. It's a great basic platform, and it's a great way to balance out the game. And what I love about this is one of the things in first edition that people love to do was to fly these in formation, and one of the best ways to do that was to take a whole bunch of Black Squadron pilots with crack shot. And look, you can still do that theoretically anyway, but now we have lots of named pilots at the same initiative, and I think that's really, really good, especially the Inferno Squadron pilots, which were actually the ones revealed today. Del Meeko, Gideon Hask, and Skin Marana, or Cian Marana, I can't quite make out if that's a C or an E, all fly alongside Iden Versio, and they all have abilities that work well together. Obviously, Iden Versio can protect her buddies, and Skin Marana has the old Wampa ability where she can get through damage on the opponent with relative ease. If you roll any critical damage, you can immediately deal them a damage card, and then Gideon Hask and Del Meeko can use their offensive and defensive ability respectively to help out their squad, which seems really, really good. And if the four of them together work out roughly the same points as the old PS6s, which is kind of where they roughly sit, and look, all indications we can see so far say they should roughly equal that 16-15 point mark, you can get them all on the table for about 120 points. And that seems really good. Maybe you can fly us alongside a support ship like a Shuttle or a Reaper with some interesting crew. That could be really, really good. I love the design of specifically getting TIE fighters to fly alongside each other. It makes me very, very happy. Also revealed today was Mauler Mythil and Scourge. Mauler Mythil, while you perform an attack at range 1, roll 1 additional attack die. That's the same ability that he always had. And Scourge, while you perform an attack against the defender in your bullseye firing arc, roll 1 additional attack die. Now, the old ability on Scourge played around with wanting to have damage cards on your opponent. Obviously, if he did that moving forward, he would combo with the Inferno Squadron pilots, and I don't think that's what FFG wanted to do. They wanted to keep that Inferno Squadron sort of insular in the way they work with each other. And Scourge gets an ability that works inside his bullseye firing arc. At Initiative 5, I think that's actually pretty good. As long as he's not too expensive, that seems like a pretty legit ability. And moving on to the TIE Interceptor. Now, the TIE Interceptor in first edition got a fix with a buttload of new pilots. And it may look a bit barren just looking at these 4 pilots here, but please remember guys, as these ships get re-released in second edition, they are going to add more and more pilots. What I think hurts it most in second edition right now is the lack of Khan or Jax. And he is hoping when the Interceptor gets his proper release, they will add him back into the game. Anyway, revealed today was Turfanier, and yes, he has a functional reprint of his old ability. At Initiative 4, I think it would have been nice to have him in Initiative 5, but nonetheless, this is okay. It just comes down to how much he'll cost. If he's too expensive, he won't see play because he's too fragile. But if he's cheap enough, I can see him seeing play as a very, very light ace. Sunterfell nets focus tokens if he has enemy ships inside his bullseye firing arc. Now, a lot of you guys are really down on this, and I just want to encourage you guys to try and see the bigger picture. Nothing gets to token stack anymore. That's just the reality of the game now. The fact of the matter is, Sunterfell can get himself focus tokens pretty reliably, and he can do it also when he bumps, which is very, very useful. Obviously, blocking Sunterfell is one of the best ways to kill him in first edition, and I think that's still going to be the case in second edition. But the fact of the matter is, he still manages to get himself tokens even when he has, and that feels pretty good. He can take 2 focus tokens, he can take an evade, he can double reposition to make sure he has an enemy inside his bullseye firing arc. Yeah, look guys, I wouldn't write him off just yet. Look, he's not going to be the invincible boogeyman he once was. That's actually a good thing. That is a negative play experience. I know a lot of you Imperial players kind of lean on him as this kind of pilot you want to use, but I can tell you as a non-Imperial player, shooting something over and over again and never hitting it is not a feel-good experience. So this is going to be more about balance. It's going to be less about making him this impenetrable fortress. And if the points accurately reflect that, I think he's going to be perfectly playable. Moving on to the TIE Phantom. Nothing new was revealed in this recent unboxing except for the Sigma Squadron Ace at Initiative 4, another one of the generics. Will be cool to see whether or not he gets talent. Apart from that, Echo and Whisper have not changed. apart from the fact that Whisper now gets an evade token if an attack hits instead of a focus token. But the important thing moving forward is we no longer have the advanced cloaking device, and this is pretty big, but we do have Stygium Array burnt into all the TIE Phantoms, which allows them to recloak for free if they retain evade tokens, which is the reason that Whisper has changed her focus token to an evade token. So I still think this is perfectly playable, just bear in mind you don't get to do that shoot cloak thing immediately. And I think the points will reflect that. I don't think this is going to be like the 40-ish point build that it used to be. Moving on to the TIE Punisher, and we've cut away the Black Squadron 8 pilot. Fair enough, I don't think we really needed two generics. We previously talked about Death Rain. This ability has been massively simplified. After you drop a launcher device, you may perform an action. None of that launching stuff forward and barrel rolling out of the way nonsense. It's nice and simple, which I think is a much better design. Now, Redline's ability is interesting. First of all, he's at Initiative 5, which is really good for this platform. But you can maintain up to 2 locks. Okay, that's the same. After you perform an action, you may acquire a lock. And the old one specifically said you can acquire a second target lock on the same ship. Now, I'm curious whether or not you have that option anyway in 2nd edition. Maybe when you are able to take 2 target locks, you can target lock the same ship twice. Be interesting to see what the rules say about that, but I really like this ability. It's been upgraded so you don't just have to target lock in order to get a target lock, you can do anything in order to get a target lock. It also says you may acquire a target lock, meaning if you take the target lock action, you haven't locked yourself out from doing it again. It's not the same action, so you can do that. It means you can take red actions. Red actions prevent you from taking actions, but they don't prevent you from just acquiring target locks. Again, unless that rule's changed also. But yeah, a lot more flexibility in this. Adding reload, booster red target lock, and red barrel roll. I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised with this platform. I think the thing that really held it back in 1st edition was the costing, and if we can just squeeze the points down a little bit with this fix, I think it'll have a bit of potential. The TIE Striker, again, is another one of these ships that have lost a generic pilot. Again, not really a big loss in 2nd edition because of the way the app works. And all of the named pilots have a functional reprint of their old self, apart from Duchess, which now has the ability to use adaptive ailerons while stressed. And yes, also important to note, adaptive ailerons are burnt into the card so you don't have the option not to take them. Not much to say. I think the platform underperformed a bit in 1st edition. It doesn't have lightweight frame anymore, so I think the costings is really going to have to try and reflect that as best as possible. We do know that this ship is going to be receiving bombs, so we'll see if that's enough to make it competitive. I'm just not sure at this point. I think we need a bit more information before we make a decision on this ship. Alright, and lucky last, the VT-49 Decimator. Unfortunately, we no longer have Commander Ken Kirk, but we have Rear Admiral Shenru, which is very similar to his old ability, except his ability only works in a quadrant he has reinforced. Seems fair enough. It was a very powerful ability, so I think that's going to work okay. But what I'm really keen for, and Justin, I know you're watching, dude, we had a chat about this before when we were recording yesterday. Captain Oiken. I think this is pretty legit. You can perform attacks at range 0. Now, the old ability allowed you to damage your opponent if you rammed into them, which is really good. Don't get me wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with that old ability. But being able to perform attacks at range 0 seems really legit. It's kind of like a one-sided Zebraelius, but this guy already wanted to ram into your opponent's ship. He still does. And with the Dauntless title, he can do it with modified dice as well. I think that just sounds awesome. Hopefully he doesn't cost too much, but I have a feeling that Captain Oiken is actually going to be preferred over Rear Admiral Shinru moving forward. Sorry, Shinru, I can hear you. And yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised by that. He might be the new hotness in terms of decimators. And that is every pilot for the Empire. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stay tuned, I'm going to do a video on all the unique crew and upgrades for the Empire, as well as all the pilots and crew for the Scum faction as well. Heaps and heaps to talk about. In the meantime, guys, in the comment section, let me know what you think of all this new stuff. Like and subscribe, like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Reddit, and I will catch you guys later.